Okay, so we have already done the consultation with Annabelle, and as you can see here, she's got a beautiful set of brows. So what I'm going to be demonstrating to you is a mapping string method and using a sticky ruler as well. I find using those two together really optimizes the best shape that you can possibly make for your client. Plus, you can get better results with measurements as you're just not guessing. So what I'm going to do is I've got my sticky ruler here and my mapping string here. If you look at Annabelle's brows already, she's pretty symmetrical, slightly higher on this side, but that's quite normal. So she's got a very, very lovely shape. What we want to achieve is just a soft elongated arch with a slight lift to the tails. I think that will really complement her. We don't want to go too much out of her natural brow hairs, and the thickness she wants to keep is quite similar to what she has now, but just a little bit more fuller on the tops. So I'm going to demonstrate to you how we're going to achieve all of that. I want to make it super easy. Obviously pre-drawing is something that takes its time, but we don't want to get too lost and complicated into things. I think at the moment there's a lot of methods going on with mapping string where you can cross you know, both lines into the center, and that can work as well without you using a ruler. So if someone is super unsymmetrical, using the ruler first will give you sort of like the foundation, but it doesn't always mean it's going to completely fix everything. You're going to have to obviously use your eye, and you want to have a little bit of vision prior to starting your mapping. So I already know what I want to achieve. If you look at her brows and her bulb, she's got a lovely bulb already. She's got a few little hairs here that will most probably miss out, and then as you can see, she's got very sparse hair coming through the body going into the tail. So we most probably just want to fill that in a little bit, but also give a little bit of a lift. So I've already know what direction I'm going with. So I'm going to use my vision, I'm going to get the micro brush, and I'm just going to have a look and just assess what I want to achieve. Looking at her shape, she needs a little bit more fullness under the arch here, and we want to lift the tail up. So I'm already going to have an idea with where I want my shape and my mapping string to go. It's very important that you already see this before you start your shaping. So again, we're going to draw with a pencil as well as mapping. It's very important that you keep your string super neat, because that avoids any problems when you come into outlining. So further ado, let's start. So I'm going to grab the mapping string, and what I'm going to do is find the center point of her brows. Now you don't really want to take the center point of her nose because your nose isn't always symmetrical. So you're trying to look at both eyes, if you look at the tear duct there. So you want to take the center of both of those. An easy way to do it is you just pull your finger and you can see like a line that sort of comes up in the center there. So that's where I want to visually do that. You want to pull the string quite tight around your index finger, and then you've got your thumbs here to press down if needed. You want to swipe up in one direction, avoid going in both directions when you're putting the string on the skin because it will make it super messy and thicker. Some strings can be quite messy, so it's something where you need to trial them out because some are really wet. Okay, so next thing, I'm just going to pull up like that. I'm going to get vision to where I want to put it. If it's not right, I'll move it again. Now I'm just going to stick the 0. You want to try and place it quite low, but you still want to have some space above the eyebrow hairs there. And you'll mostly have to move it depending on like some client's nose. So sometimes you can't pop that sticker too far down. So I'm just going to pop it on now and you'll see what I mean. I might just have to move it as I go when we do the bottom line. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to make sure that both sides go straight across into the temple. Okay, now we're going to grab a mapping string, and I'm just going to look closely. So usually your natural bulbs will start at 1.5. So naturally people tend to have like a 3 centimetre gap, and you can work up to 2 centimetres in gap. So the furthest that you want to go in really is 1. So you can work with anything between 1.5 and 1 on there. So if I look at her natural hairs, they actually stop at 1. But what I might do, I like to give myself a little bit of leverage. So I might just take it back by a millimetre. So we're going to most probably stop that at 1.1. So again, just twist around. And then just swipe, and there you go. I'm going to mirror that on the opposite side as well. Again, 1.1. There we go. Okay, next we're going to do the arches. I like to keep them at 4.5. I feel like this is a really good foundation for every client, and that's where that's going to be your height, or that's where it's going to be tapered up. So we're just going to add that on there. Do the same for the opposite side. Doesn't have to be too dark, as long as you can see it. And then again, we're going to do the tails. So there's different ways that you can do the tails. You can make sure that the mapping, you can do this right across to the last lash line. So the corner of the nose to the last lash line, and then just diagonally hit it across like this. The client is left with a little bit of a line on their face, but don't worry, we'll sort that out. So naturally her tails and roughly just over about 6.7. So we want to give her a little bit more length. So yeah, it's saying roughly around about 7, so let's stop that at 7. Now if the tails were longer than 7, like so if they go past 7, you usually find that if you've got very wide set eyes, you might need to move your arch down to most probably 5, because the tail will be way too long. And again, at the moment I'm just sitting behind the bed while I'm doing this. Okay, so now we have our main lines. Okay, so next I'm going to establish the height. Okay, so naturally you don't want your height to be too high. You actually want it to be as close to her natural hairs as possible. This is the reason being with this is because when you set her up just to check, you then have room if you want to then add. The worst thing you can do is make things too thick on the top, and then you've got to remove a lot. So less actually is more. So I'm going to take her last hairs. So if you can see, I'm going to hit it just right there. She's got some little fluffy ones, so I don't want to use those. And I'm just going to bang it straight across, like if you can see on that ruler really closely. I'm going to make sure that that line in the center is very even. And then just bang it across like that. What I'm looking at here is we already know that this side is naturally higher. So I'm looking at this sort of space just in this part here. As you can see, there's more space there. That's because this brow is naturally lower. So what I already know that this side needs to come up a little bit in height, and this one most probably needs to come down a little bit, and that will just give it the level that it needs. Again, it's not too drastic. If you're looking for 100% perfection, sometimes you're not going to achieve that, and you're just going to make the shapes too thick. With this, she's got a slight bit of asymmetry, but you know, we can fix that. Okay, so now we are going to join. So as you can see here, can you see like a little cross that we have? We want to hit our mapping string literally in the center of that cross. And then I'm going to taper it to one of these measurements. And that depends, your taper depends on what you want to achieve. So if you taper it quite low, the angle at the front is going to be like this. So it's going to make the brows look a little bit more arched. If you want the brows to look more straight, then your taper is going to be very minimal and it's just going to be straight across. I'm not sure yet. I like to, before I stick the mapping string on, I like to just start. So I'm going to start putting this string on our arch point, just there. And then what I want to do is if you just close your eyes for me for a minute, just because it relaxes her muscle, I want to stick as close to the thickness of her hairs as possible, but I don't want it to be too tapered at the front, because it can frame the shape a little bit rounded if you're not careful. So I'm gonna go to there, yeah, and I'm just gonna slide away. But before I do the other side, I'm just going to double check if I'm happy. Again, having it too straight can make it look a little bit unnatural. I might just go with that one. And that's what I love about mapping, like you don't have to get it right straight away. Yeah, you see that looks a little bit more natural to me. And then you can just remove the lines that you don't want. So the number that I used was this one here, just above the 5, so 0.4. So I'm going to do that now on the opposite side. So I'm going to go from here, make sure that you're definitely on that center line. And then remember, this one's going to maybe look a little bit thicker on the top. And drag it across. Okay. So now that we've done that, I then like to pop the mapping string on the arch point, and then I want to connect it to the tail. Again, you're going to have to soften these corners. This again is just giving you the foundation that you need. Again, how far you taper it depends on the height of the tail. If you struggle with visually looking about your tail heights, because to me, you've got to really have a good vision to see on both sides the symmetry. You can't always buy rulers that have measurements that actually go down that way. So then you'll be able to exactly mark, like what I've just done in the center, the height of the tail where you want the taper to end. I'm just going to do it with my eye. So, and if I feel like I don't like it when she sits up, then I can just change it. So again, I'm going to go from this cross, and I'm just going to stay naturally to her, like within her hairs. But I'm just going to make sure it's just like a little bit more straighter going across. Now we're getting like a little shape. I'm going to do the same to this side. Again, I'm just going to visually do it by eye. I can always check from the back as well. And if you don't have one of those rulers, you can always check with a caliper. Okay, looks fine. Now we're going to do the bottom. The bottom can get a bit difficult because if you're not careful, if you go from behind here and do the bottom, you can get like a really bad swoop with the mapping string. So I like to come from the side. I need to make sure that my mapping string is super, super tight, and I'm just going to slide in one direction. Again, what I want to achieve is I want to achieve a natural incline going to the same arch point as the top. So I want it to incline naturally at 4.5. I want them both to be parallel from the bulb, and I want the incline to taper up together at the same time. So again, I'm going to go from this side now. So for now, I'm going to just visually see where I want to go with it. I think one would be too thin. So can you see this thumb here? I'm using this to taper. You see? That's obviously too thin going up. But you want a natural taper. Please do not go straight across like that. If you go straight across like that, when you come to your arch, you won't be able to soften it. It'll be like a hook. So you need some arches. I'm going to go to a little bit below her brow hairs. You just want to literally just slide across, and then you want to do the tail, so roll her head over to me. As you can see, you've got a nice taper going on at the moment. This is just foundation basis. Obviously, I'm going to enhance the shape with my pencil. When it comes to doing the tail, you just want to connect. I'm just going to literally just slide with my thumbs across. So I just want to get like a little bit more of a softer taper coming round. But you can do this with your pencil as well. I'm going to put that line back in so you can see where we are. And then I'm just going to taper this. Can you see with this thumb here? I'm just going to connect to the top line. Okay. Just going to turn her head. So it's a little bit high, which is fine, because what I'm going to do, I'm just going to bring it down just a little bit. So I'm just going to curve my string all the way around like that. At this point, you can do all of this with your pencil. If you can see here, I'm going to go from the 4.5 mark. Just curve that round a little bit, like that. Can you see that C arch? You want the arch to look like an elongated C. So you want the drop to be a good couple of millimeters after your 4.5 mark. Otherwise, it's too sharp. So I'm going to most probably make sure like the curve is sort of like this long. And then I want it to start tapering down around 5. And then I'm going to join. You want the tails to taper like a nice V. So there we go. As you can see, that was like obviously where I had first initially put it, but that's fine. We can just wipe that away. And then we can carry on with what we were doing.